Good evening, everyone, and thank you. The clock in the back of the room says it's 7 o'clock, and we're going to get started. And I would like to thank you very much for being part of democracy right now. This is wonderful to see us having to add more chairs to listen. Thank you. So just in case you don't know where you are, let me tell you, you're at the 3rd District Candidates Forum at the Grange, and we very much appreciate the Grange allowing us to be here. Let me tell you who the sponsors are. Thank you, Grange. Tonight's event is being sponsored by the Willits branch of the American Association of University Women. Yay! The Willits News. Well, as I said, the Little Lake Grange, we can give them another hand here. The Willits Chamber of Commerce. And the Willits Weekly. My name is Tom Allman. I'm the sheriff, and I'll be moderating it. And only in the 3rd District do they need the sheriff to moderate a debate. I want you to know what some of the simple rules are, and I know all of you came in and there were some 3x5 cards. It's very important that you know that if you do want a question asked, the question needs to be for all 4 candidates, not a specific candidate up here. It needs to be for all 4. The organizers will group the questions together and consolidate as seems appropriate. This is very important for the candidates. A timekeeper will time each candidate using a yellow card to let the candidate know when he or she has 30 seconds left, and a red car and a bell to tell you that your time is up. When the bell rings, our friend Dave, in charge of the sound, will turn your microphone off. The forum is planned to be videotaped for broadcast on Willits Community Television, another great asset to us, and may be broadcast on KZYX and Z as well if the logistics all work out. As the forum concludes, the candidates are requested to remain at the Grange for at least a half hour for informal questions and discussion with members of the audience. Let me tell you what the agenda is going to be, and then we'll get started. Then this is going to be a good night. I'm glad you're here. You're going to really appreciate being here. So we're going to start with each candidate beginning an introduction and information to the audience. The candidates will be allowed up to 90 seconds to introduce themselves and say why they are running for office. The first candidates to speak will be chosen at random by the organizers, and I can let the cat out of the bag now. The person who gets to speak first is candidate Romero. The candidates will answer questions gathered prior to the forum by the forum sponsors until 8 o'clock p.m., when the audience questions will be posed. The audience questions will be combined and simplified as needed by the organizers to ensure as many questions of concern to the community may be addressed. At around 8:50, the candidates will be offered 90 seconds each for concluding remarks. With that, we're going to get started right away. Clay, you'll be the first to introduce yourself. You have 90 seconds.
Good evening, I'm Clay Romero, candidate for 3rd District Supervisor. I believe that you'll find I'm not just more of the same, but I'm a local, hard-working candidate that can be rightfully distinguished by 4 defining characteristics. I'm a Christian and cannot be bought. I live by the courage of my convictions, and I have a moral obligation not only to the people, but to God. I must do what is right and be the best and brightest that the 3rd District of Mendocino County has to offer. You'll find that I take job creation very seriously. I'm willing to lend a helping hand to any manufacturing or farming business that has a burning need to employ people, and I'm willing to reward them for doing so. The best social program is a job. I have designed a health care plan also to make things more efficient. I can reasonably expect that this plan will save the county perhaps about $30 million per year, guarantee health care providers payment in 3 days, simplify medical record keeping, and without requiring enrollment by the government. If the people like my plan, they will embrace it because it works. It's based on a simple principle. You pay the people that do the work, and you don't pay the people who don't. I take the issue of water seriously. You can count on me to forward the development of water supplies, be it tanks, waters, ponds, or lakes. Conservation is not going to be enough. I would like to see Mendocino County become food self-sufficient, and water is key to achieving that goal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Hal Wagenet.
Hello, everybody. I am Hal Wagenet, and I have been a supervisor before from 03 to 06. I'm a native of the town, lived here most of my 67 years. I operate a sound and lighting company that many of you know, Modern Music Sound, and I use that almost exclusively to support nonprofits and good causes. I also sit on 5 nonprofit boards and am currently the chair of Visit Mendocino County, our tourism promotion entity, as well as the Arts Council of Mendocino County, the Railroad Board, Black-tailed Deer Association, Promotional Alliance, and so forth. So I have been a public servant, and I work steadily as on these nonprofit boards, and I work privately pretty much in the same direction. I've seen a lot of changes in this town. I've seen roads come, roads go. A lot of you weren't here when I was born. And the impacts of you coming here and we all being here and the growth that we've all experienced and the strain on our resources is pretty much what brings us here. But tonight I think is not so serious. It's a joyous occasion. I've seen how politics work in other lands. I've actually seen people shot and lie in the streets for speaking their mind. We don't have to do that here. We're here to elect the best of the 4. So let's go to it.
Next is Tom Woodhouse.
Thank you. My name's Tom Woodhouse. I've lived in Willits for 40 years, and I'm very proud to be here tonight. I'm not a person who's been a politician or served before in that way. I've worked quietly behind the scenes. I'm mainly running inspired by my wife and my children, and it's just time to give back. We've been really blessed by this community, and I appreciate the freedom that we've had and the friendships that we've made. I've been in business for 40 years selling real estate, and in order to succeed, you have to listen a lot, you have to be very patient, and you don't get paid until you complete the job with people. So I've made a lot of deep friendships and helped people through very serious times, and it's just really given me a lot of gratitude for the blessings we all have. And I think it's time that we take back our government. It really is a tool that works for us, but we have to pick it up and use it. It needs help right now, and I think we can do it together. I'm excited to get to work on it, and I'd be very proud to get your support. I really want to represent you. I don't have a tight agenda or a lot of demands myself, but I know we can be happier and move forward if we work together. Thank you.
And next is Holly Madrigal.
Hi, I'm Holly Madrigal. I'm running for 3rd District Supervisor, and I'm the best choice for this office. I work incredibly hard to make Willits a better place. Recently, during the campaign, my opponents have been bashing the city of Willits a little bit. Our sewer treatment project, the police department, our budget. And I just want to say that I love Willits. I grew up here, met my husband here, and I'm incredibly proud of what we have accomplished as a community. It's just, we have beat the worst drought that we've had in generations. We met that head on. We've kept our streets safe by keeping the police department funded. We beat the recession by keeping a budget reserve. My support is very broad. I'm supported by Congressman Jared Huffman, Assemblymember Noreen Evans, Assemblymember Chesborough, and most importantly, I'm supported by many of you who are here tonight. That's what matters the most. I work hard to represent all of you, and I know the issues. There's a lot to do in this next term as your next county supervisor. We have to work on a county-wide water policy. Currently, there is none. We need to protect our bypass interchanges so that we don't have sprawl and suck the energy out of our town. And there's a lot to do, and I'm going to accomplish that, and that's why I'm asking for your vote for supervisor.
Okay, let's get started. And Clay, you're the first.
Okay.
Could you please say, what is the most serious issue facing residents in the 3rd District? What actions will you take during your first year in office to improve the situation?
I would have to say that probably among the more serious situation is jobs. There's been as you can tell just by looking at the sign there for the population in town, the population of the town has decreased. There are some vacant buildings that have resulted from this. Part of the problem is as a result of, surprisingly, and I know a lot of you are very beholden to this, but it's the marijuana culture. Because legitimate manufacturing companies, they are not particularly interested in moving to a place where they would have to drug test people and be concerned about people leaving to go trim. And so I think that it's kind of a very serious problem that has to be contended with. I certainly want to see business promoted further and to provide jobs. And I'm certainly willing to provide tax incentives to any business that is willing to come here and put forth that good effort and employ people. The best social program is a job. Thank you.
What is the most serious issue facing residents in the 3rd District? What actions will you take during your first year in office to improve the situation?
Well, I think the most serious issue that faces us is our lack of water policy and what we're doing about that. In the 3rd District, of course, the conflicts between Willits and Brook Trails stand in the way of resolving that easily. So I think that mediating that particular conflict or hoping that it will resolve in the courts is number one, because Brook Trails and Willits are essentially a two-lobed community. And they have other interests. They have transportation interests. We should take the bottom of Sherwood Road once Caltrans fixes it up, and the city can work on the part that's in the city limits, and the county can take care of the learning curve, and then you would actually have a safe route that would buy you enough time to have a proper second access to the freeway interchange on the north. So that is a priority. The other main priority, I think, is this jobs issue. And what underlies a good economy is a good transportation network. For that, you need rock, you need asphalt, and if you look around, you've got a local provider who provides local jobs. You keep your revenue in the community by buying from the Harris Quarry, and you would keep the sales tax in the community and the trucking and all the rest of it.
Both jobs and water are huge, and jobs you could say is number one. But really to create jobs, one great thing we could work on would be the youth in our town. I'm coming from a lot of experience with the schools, and they're going through particular trouble right now. A lot of people are leaving, the budget's changing, and we're not reaching our kids. And really the core, if you want to have jobs, you have to have a trained, drug-free, motivated workforce. And to me, that means starting with children. I think if we work with that, it'll bring us all together. And it's really not the number one job of a supervisor, and I'm told it's not a great way to get votes, but it's something I believe in, and it's something I'm going to do, so I want to be upfront with you about that. Children deserve a good education. We all had a good education. That's why we're able to be here and reach our goals in life. And I want to give all of our children and to come the same opportunity. Vocational training is something we're set up for here in the county. We have the equipment, and if 10 of us got together, we could change our goals and make this a vocational ed training center for the whole county. Thank you.
Holly, what is the most serious issue facing residents in the 3rd District? What actions will you take during your first year in office to improve the situation?
I would also say water. We can't have the economic growth that we need without it. You can't drink money, frankly. I mean, it's a finite resource. I'm going to contrast with the other candidates. The water issue is not a Willits and Brook Trails issue. This is a county-wide water policy that we need. We have a water agency at the county, but it is currently defunded, basically. There's no one that's working on an overall policy for all of us. And frankly, our neighbors to the south have taken advantage of our water rights that we have here in Mendocino County, and someone needs to be standing up for us for that. I support the congressional legislation that's going forward to allow us to manage Lake Mendocino better. But also, we have all these little water districts. We have 10 of them in Mendocino County that are each working very hard to produce the best quality water for their own individual districts, but no one is looking at that overall policy. No one is advocating for us, and so that's what I will do when I'm at the supervisorial level.
Okay, thank you very much. Hal, you're next. What can the Board of Supervisors do to improve employment within Mendocino County? What will you do during your first year in office if elected?
The county government doesn't create jobs in the private sector. It can only create jobs in its own house. So if you want larger government, then we can go in that direction. But many of you have told me that you don't want larger government. You want it smaller, but you still want the services. So we are now in the situation where the cuts have been made, and I think they've gone too far. We do need to restore some of those. If you have somebody in the tax collector's office, a tax assessor's office, that goes out and determines that you have developed properties, and we discover that about 30% of them in some areas are not even reported, clearly you've cut too far because you've hurt your own revenues. But if you are going to support jobs, you're going to be supporting them in construction, such as the Howard Hospital. You're going to be supporting them in the Harris Quarry deal. You're going to be supporting them in forestry, because forestry is going to be the rising tide that floats all boats in the long run. We think it's gone, but it's not gone. It's simply reemerging, and it's coming back like a tsunami. If we were going to be investing in infrastructure for the future, that's the place to do it.
Tom, what can the Board of Supervisors do to improve employment within Mendocino County? What will you do during your first year in office if elected?
There are a couple of things that you need to do. First would be to retain the jobs you have rather than rush out and try to create others. The employees at the county have been cut back again and again, and now there are a third less employees, and they're not happy, they're not being efficient and productive, and no one's paying attention to them. The way I want to work with government is to walk beside those employees one by one and hear their story of how to improve their situation. And it's not just with money, it's with the attention and paying attention to their good ideas and regrowing them as happier, fulfilled employees that will be more efficient for us. That'll be a savings for us all. And it just creates a happier workplace as well. So retaining those jobs is the number one thing. Planning and building is always, in every campaign, the biggest complaint of the populace. The rules and the misdirection given to people trying to create jobs is ridiculous. It needs to be rebuilt. Everybody pledges to do it, but I will actually go in there and do it, because it's just not fair the way it works now. They tell people one thing and then switch the rules and scare away the people that are going to give us the jobs that we need.
Thank you. Holly, what can the Board of Supervisors do to improve employment within Mendocino County? What will you do during your first year in office if elected?
You can improve employment by voting for Holly on June 3rd. I think that the supervisors have a really big role to play, actually, in economic development, and that is a role of facilitation. The planning department needs to be problem solvers. That is not how it is right now. I've spoken to James up in Laytonville. He was trying to open a beekeeping store to sell those supplies. He has a market up there, but he finally had to give up on the location he was at because he ran into so many regulatory hoops getting through the county offices. I've really had a leadership in this role here locally, working with my mayor's initiative, trying to encourage manufacturing. We made a 3% goal of increasing manufacturing business, and we met that goal. And we're doing that by working with individuals to see what they need. And one of the things that came up in talking to residents was they needed to be able to see what was available. I had someone who was trying to start a manufacturing business here locally, which is what we want. And yet they had an incredibly hard time finding a location. So I developed a spreadsheet, a group of volunteers and I gathered the relevant information together. There are things that we can do at the Board of Supervisors level to make sure that we're encouraging job creation.
Thank you. Clay, what can the Board of Supervisors do to improve employment within Mendocino County? What will you do during your first year in office if elected?
I would certainly want to see the Board of Supervisors, as well as other county agencies, just get the heck out of the way and let the people do what they do best, and that is create jobs. I can give you an example. One of the things that I'm very mindful of, because I am in industry and I do a lot of machine work, is to have, I guess you could call it like a furnace or a foundry for people that do recycling. I would very much like to see bottles and plastics and all this sort of thing be recycled into saleable blocks for industry rather than simply shipping it out here, which costs us money. The same thing can be done with aluminum and perhaps some of the other plastics. Even cardboard can be processed here to where we can actually have a real saleable product. I'm also very mindful about doing whatever possible to help the people that are doing farming. Farming is the original manufacturing, and it's something that I hold with great and high regard. And finally, I would like to say that if I were on the board, I would be very amenable to giving a tax break to anybody that's going to establish a business and want to employ people. Thank you.
The next question, I promise I had nothing to do with writing, but I greatly appreciated being here. Are you satisfied with the level of resources dedicated to the Sheriff's Office within the 3rd District? If yes, explain. If not, what do you intend to do differently?
Tom and I are good friends, and we are going to be working our relationship differently soon. He has some real clear points. There's 5 points of how he wants to deal with the problem of marijuana out in the hills, as far as commercial grows and diversion of water and the destruction of wildlife. These are things that I feel very strongly about, and we are going to work on the problems together. It's really unacceptable what's happening now, and no matter where you are in the marijuana position, it is something that's not tolerable anymore to allow what's happening to our county. So Tom likes me a lot, and I hope that continues, but there's going to be a lot of pressure put on him with limited funds to perform a miracle and get our county back for us. I'm looking forward to that negotiation and retaining our friendship if possible.
Holly, are you satisfied with the level of resources dedicated to the Sheriff's Office within the 3rd District? If yes, explain. If not, what do you intend to do differently?
It's great that you're moderating this. Tom, I think you're an excellent advocate for your budget. I just want to say. And so I think that you are doing a very good job advocating for the Sheriff's Department. I think as my role as supervisor, we're going to have some really hard conversations because of the budget. The current supervisors have made gains building a budget reserve, but I am really conservative when I think about the future because of unfunded pension debt issues, because of the incredibly low morale with our county employees. You know, they took a 10% pay cut years ago, and that has not been restored. We need to rebuild the faith in our county employees. There's a number of very important priorities that need to go forward at the Board of Supervisors, and so I'm going to be negotiating everything I can to make sure that we meet all of those priorities.
Thank you. Clay, are you satisfied with the level of resources dedicated to the Sheriff's Office within the 3rd District? If yes, explain. If not, what do you intend to do differently?
No, I'm not satisfied. I think there's some things that need to be checked upon. As some of you may recall that back in 1993, Proposition 172 was passed that was allowed 0.5 cent of our sales tax to be dedicated specifically for public safety. It's my understanding from some of the people I've spoken with that this may not necessarily be happening, and I think that's a good thing to be looking into. The other thing that I think would be a very important factor is the healthcare plan that I've been working on. This is a big deal, and it crosses both conservative and liberal lines of thinking. But I'm very interested in seeing that people have some method of getting health care, something that will hopefully start at the county offices. Now, I know initially when I spoke to this to some people that they thought, well, what does health care have to do with the county? Well, in my conversation with the people at the county today, they're going through about $60 million per year in healthcare costs. I think if my plan were implemented where it was a medical membership, we could save, I'm estimating here, there's a lot of open area, but about $30 million, and I think we could spend that on things that are a whole lot better than where it's being wasted now, and that's with insurance companies that are not beholden to a patient and a doctor, but they're shareholders.
Thank you. Hal, are you satisfied with the level of resources dedicated to the sheriff's office within the 3rd District? If yes, explain. If not, what do you intend to do differently?
The chief job of the supervisors is a public safety job, and law enforcement and roads are essentially it. On the sheriff's department, we budget somewhere between $40 and $50 million annually for all aspects of the sheriff's department. And the level of deputy service that we have is probably less than what we had 20, 30 years ago in terms of total numbers of deputies, and certainly less than our per capita population ratio that we had then. So I would like to see that increased. So much of the service calls are for marijuana-related crimes, and by that I mean the violence, the home invasions, the hard drugs that come along with it, and now we have the added deal of the water, which is being stolen and not prosecuted and reported properly. We need a mechanism for that. And when you go up into Covelo, you will certainly hear that they would like to have 2 resident deputies, as was promised some years ago, and there's only 1 there now, and there's a number of reasons for that. But that needs to be restored. Additionally, I have written a grant on marijuana cleanup in the forests. It has been funded, and I think that you're going to find sheriff's office and private entities working together on that particular aspect of things. We can go into that more later.
Okay, I'm glad that question's over. Holly, you're up. Water is a critical issue at this time. What can the Board of Supervisors do to actually develop and implement a comprehensive water strategy for Mendocino County?
I think I've largely spoken to that because it's one of the things that I think is really critically important, which is basically a county-wide water policy. That's what we need to develop and work on. But there is more to be said, always. When I was talking earlier about the need for that policy in order to have economic growth, and actually on the question about jobs for our community, I forgot to really bring up our local agriculture and ranching and local food. Studies have shown that actually if we shifted 15% of our food buying dollars to local farmers and ranchers, it would put in $20 million into our local economy in Mendocino County. That is not insignificant. And 15% is a lot. I mean, right now, much of what we buy comes from out of town. If we could just support our ranchers that much more, it would go a long way. But we need water to do that. We need water to do so many job production programs. And I've really been a leader on this area. You know, we met this drought crisis head on. I've been working with Carrie Brown on the Drought Ad Hoc Committee, interviewed by NPR, traveled with our city manager to Sacramento to testify on the impacts to rural communities. It's an incredibly important issue.
Thank you. Clay, water is a critical issue at this time. What can the Board of Supervisors do to actually develop and implement a comprehensive water strategy for Mendocino County?
I would like to see where Perhaps we can revisit what John Pinchas had looked at for some years ago about water from near the Wente Reservation. And also, I would be very much in favor of giving people a break, and when they want to see what they can do about gathering water from rain. There's also other things that I would be very much in favor of, although it's a little bit out of the hands to a certain extent with the county supervisors. But I would certainly want to do everything I could within my power to allow people to develop ponds and lakes and the placement of tanks and this sort of thing. Anything to allow them to have a greater supply of water that would be extremely helpful, so as that ultimately I would like to see that people could become food sufficient within the county, and water is a very, very key part of that.
Thank you. Hal, water is a critical issue at this time. What can the Board of Supervisors do to actually develop and implement a comprehensive water strategy for Mendocino County?
Well, you start by bringing back the water agency, which I was part of the board that created that in 2003, and as soon as I was replaced, it was defunded. But it needs to come back. You do need a comprehensive policy, but you'll discover right away that on the coast they draw from the Noyo River with pumps, and all the outlying areas have wells, and as soon as those go dry around September, there is no distribution mechanism. That's different from Covelo and Laytonville, which depends on aquifers, which are robust and don't ever seem to go dry. And in this area, we have surface water. But the heart of our county is the Eel and the Russian system, which is a twin river system that is currently managed essentially by lawsuit. I don't agree with that. Sonoma County controls 85% of that water because that's what they contributed in the original construction fees. We don't have anything to say about that. It's not tied to our budgets or anything else. It's a water right. The only way the Mendocino County can get a new water right is to increase the storage capacity by raising Lake Mendocino County and be the lead agency in doing so. Then you will have a saleable product that the Mendocino Water Agency can provide to its customers downstream. I will stop there.
Okay.
This is a big issue, but it's a great example of a challenge that we have not done well at. If we're really going into a drier time, which I believe for the next number of years, we need to put this as a priority, and that means sacrificing other things. And government so far refuses to pick those priorities because they don't want to tell us what we have to give up in order to reach that goal. We can do anything as far as building storage or seriously promoting conservation. Even here in Willits, we have not succeeded in getting that message out or being bold enough to buy some low-flush toilets or shower heads and move forward. Government spends a lot of time talking, but no action follows, and that's why I get frustrated, and that's why I'm running. We can accomplish these goals, and we're going to have to, because we're going to need water to fight fires that are coming up. So we could build little lakes and ponds all over to enable that. Instead, we have the government going around telling people they don't have the right to have a pond on their land and they want them to tear it out. So we send mixed messages. But if this is what you really want to work on, we can do it together.
Many individuals rely on county services. What can the Board of Supervisors do to ensure the county can continue to supply these critical services?
Well, I think probably the best source of money I can think of is what I've been saying here tonight, and that's implementing a better plan for health care for the county. Make it available to the rest of the people that are out there. I think it'll be better than what is currently offered under the Affordable Health Care Act, because the Affordable Health Care Act utilizes insurance companies to do this. And when it really comes right down to it, we can actually do this ourselves. We don't need a government program. We don't need an insurance company to do this. And it would be better off for our health care providers too, because they would be able to get paid, at least as I've been able to find, within 3 days. And I think that's a beautiful thing to do. That would free up a lot of money for people that need other services from the county. Thank you.
Okay. Hal, many individuals rely on county services. what can the Board of Supervisors do to ensure the county can continue to supply those critical services?
Well, one of the first steps has already been done. When the supervisors were considering cutting the Willits Integrated Service Center out to save $1 million, the WISC as we call it over here on the North Street, I argued that this is a hub. You can't just have everybody driving to Ukiah, especially the folks that can ill afford to drive to Ukiah for the services. So I argued for that, and the thing is there today. So you have services in this community. As far as mental health goes, you might look at that. We're going to have a nice new empty building, new old empty building in the form of the old Howard Hospital. That could be a mental health services cool down facility very easily, and that's usually what you need for mental health crises. As far as other types of services, nobody's talked yet about broadband or internet, but that underlies modern business. It underlies your shopping decisions. It underlies your research. Hospitals depend on it. Law enforcement depends on it. Machinists who do work and transmit large diagrams to other places depend on it. We've got to improve our internet service. That last mile is critical, and if we don't have that, we're going to be out of the game. Mendocino County had an opportunity when I was on the board that I don't want to see kicked away again. Williams Communication brought fiber right through Mendocino County. It didn't.
Okay.
They actually did it.
Good job, Dave.
Tom, many individuals rely on county services. What can the Board of Supervisors do to ensure the county can continue to supply these critical services?
This will affect a lot of people, maybe not the ones in this room, but there are a lot of people desperate and needy for this, and that's who's going to feel the next 10 years if we continue in a flat revenue stream. The pressure will be on when the new supervisor from this district goes onto the board. If you go onto that board with arrogance or overconfidence or a lack of focus, you're going to have your bones picked clean, and our district will be sucked. The services will be taken out of these areas, especially Laytonville and Covelo, are going to be the losers. Someone has to have their eyes wide open and be defending that pattern. That's inevitably going to happen as there's less and less money, and it happens quickly, and it comes around the corner, and you have to know what you're doing. I'm prepared to work with John Pinches, who's fought to keep our services that we have. He's done an excellent job, and we don't appreciate the battle that he has done for us. You have to have gratitude for what people who are in office have done and respect it, because when it goes, they take the blame, but then you lose all that expertise, and I'm not going to allow that to happen. Thank you.
Holly, many individuals rely on county services. What can the Board of Supervisors do to ensure the county can continue to supply these critical services?
I think the critical services at the county are roads and infrastructure. I support common sense, affordable infrastructure projects, chip seal and the like. I mean, really, when it comes down to it, half of the job of the Board of Supervisors is making sure that your roads are cared for. That's a huge portion of it. I also think that safety, mental health services are critical services that the county provides. Mental health has largely been privatized, so I think it's really important to analyze that and evaluate it and see if that's working, because that has a direct impact on our safety officers. What ends up happening is that our sheriff's department deputies, our local law enforcement, they end up basically being mental health providers, and it's not sustainable, and it's not the best use of our resources. We also really need to stand behind our county employees. The people who provide the services of the county are the county employees, and they have organizational exhaustion. They are so discouraged. Many of them are doing 3 jobs, basically, for the price of one. And when this comes to caring for our children in foster care, caring for at-risk youth, you know, it kills them when they cannot do the best job that they possibly can. So those are the things I'm going to stand up for when I'm your next supervisor.
Okay. Hal, what are the most important transportation issues facing county residents? What will you do as supervisor to address these issues?
Well, gee golly whiz, we have a lot of dirt roads. We have about 1,000 miles of roads, and only about a third of them are paved. All your dirt roads, of course, produce dust. That's obvious. It's tough on the vehicles, but it's also tough on the air, and when it rains, it goes into the water courses. Best thing to do with that is to pave as much as you can. For that, you need asphalt, and that's one of the reasons why I support the Harris Quarry. That's very plain and simple. You got to have it, and that is the best way to do it. In this area, I've already talked about the Sherwood Road corridor and what could be done to fix that. The Willits bypass, of course, is a transportation issue, but that is coming and it is going to be what it is. We just heard the other night over here at the city hall, the chamber had a meeting, and we were quite pleasantly surprised to find out that in Cloverdale, where they sent 5 representatives up to talk to us, that there is life after a bypass. And not only that, it was the unanimous opinion that it's a better quality of life afterwards. But a good transportation network underlies a good economy. So you have to support your transportation network. I sit on the railroad board. We've brought back 62 miles of the 314 that were destroyed around 1996. And I'll continue to work on that as long as I can.
Okay. Mr. Woodhouse, what are the most important transportation issues facing county residents? What will you do as a supervisor to address these issues?
Roads are the #1 challenge, and especially in our district. And the road budget's been cut. $1.5 million was taken out of it, and the roads are in horrible shape. I've read the road report and talked to Tom Peters about it. We have to do a better job with our roads, and we have less and less money to do that job. But without a good road, you can't get in to help people for safety. If there's a fire or a heart attack or need for sheriff's services, without the road, we might as well not have the people to go in there because they can't get in. So we have to invest in this, and it's painful. Willits is in a better condition than the further out areas. For Laytonville and Covelo, this is what makes the phone ring off the hook. This is what I'm determined to work with these remote areas to improve those roads. They're just getting worse and worse, and we're saving money and putting it in the reserve, but that's not going to do us any good. We need to reinvest in those roads.
Okay, thank you. Holly, what are the most important transportation issues facing county residents? What will you do as supervisor to address these issues?
Well, I want to return the focus to Brook Trails circulation. There's been discussion over the years about the issue of not only the second access, but emergency access in and out of Brook Trails. And I really feel like the focus of that has shifted, and it's still a critically important issue. We really need to make sure that those circulation patterns work well, either by widening Sherwood Road to allow for not just vehicles, but alternate forms of transportation. That's another thing that we really need to work on. It's not all about the car, and as the price of gas keeps going up and up and up, we need to make sure that there's other ways for residents to get around, not just here, but also countywide. In Covelo, they're working on an incredible pedestrian trail from their downtown out to tribal services. That project is like one of the #1 things on my list because a lot of people there don't drive. But we do need to make sure that our existing road infrastructure, and there is a ton of it, is maintained, because by keeping roads either dust abated or chip sealed or paved, ideally, it reduces the sedimentation in our streams, which helps salmon. I mean, it helps all of us, as well as being able to get in and out of our houses. And yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. Clay, what are the most important transportation issues facing county residents? What will you do as a supervisor to address these issues?
Yeah, as one who spent my formative years growing up in Laytonville, I'm very familiar with roads that can be extremely rough, and certainly the maintenance has to be stepped up in order to do that. This costs money, and I can see where that can be remedied by having a greater amount of employment going on in this county, as well as the aforementioned healthcare plan that I was talking about that could really save us a great deal. And I'm also very, very mindful of what Hal alluded to about the rail. I think there's some benefit that can be had here. I'd have to look into that further, though. I'm also mindful about for bicycle-type areas for getting in and around town, which would be very, very useful. I know currently it's a little bit hazardous. Certainly for bicycling up and down Sherwood Road is for not for the faint of heart. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, Tom. Mendocino County is mainly reliant upon energy produced outside the county. What can you do as a supervisor to encourage and promote energy production here within the county?
That's a big question, too. Just to discuss one brief part of it would be, I believe they're looking again at little biomass plants here in the county, and that would provide us with energy. So it'd be a cleaner technology that would also, as a byproduct, create some biochar and create energy here. It'll come down to whether or not this is a controversial production of energy and we fight over it and don't do anything, or whether we have a little system that provides some energy. Nobody wants to clean the forest floor and take everything out of there to make a little energy, but we need to get some energy somewhere. So I would support that and be interested to watch the discussion over that idea.
Holly, Mendocino County is mainly reliant upon energy produced outside the county. What can you do as a supervisor to encourage and promote energy production here within the county?
Well, I think the project that Tom was just referring to is the work that's being done by Ruffy, the Redwood Forest Foundation. They're doing great work, not just in terms of small-scale energy production, basically eliminating fire fuels, but they're also looking into sustainable timber forestry that balances that with a restoration economy. So look into them. They're great. In terms of Mendocino County, we could be doing a lot more as far as energy production on our buildings. There's a number of buildings that could have that are well suited to have solar energy production. That would be kind of a no-brainer to help us become not just more energy independent, but better suited to withstand a regional emergency that might interrupt our energy needs. I think we could be doing a lot more at the board to work on that. Another interesting thing that's going to be coming up in this term is the dam that is at the diversion for Potter Valley, the Potter Valley Water Diversion, that currently does provide hydroelectricity. That permit is coming up for renewal. PG&E has to decide whether or not they want to do it in 2017. I'm very interested to see how that develops and what the role of the supervisors would be in that, and if we could explore a community aggregated energy production versus that renewable source going to PG&E.
Thank you. Clay, Mendocino County is mainly reliant upon energy produced outside the county. What can you do as a supervisor to encourage and promote energy production here within the county?
Well, as part of recycling, one of the things that a lot of people are not familiar with is the recycling of cardboard and tapping off the gases and the materials there to produce energy from that. And that has shown to be somewhat successful. The other thing I would like to see come to Mendocino County, and it's still very much a high-tech type of deal, is clean coal. This is something that caught me very much by surprise. Previously, I had thought that coal was only useful if you burned it. I'm finding out from the people at Ohio State University that clean coal is actually being successfully done without actually burning the coal. This is a huge advancement and could benefit us greatly. I'm very much interested in this hydroelectric plant that's coming up for renewal. I'd like to see that continue. It's a good, clean option to use. But as far as light-duty applications go, certainly the solar and the wind, they work okay, but it's a little too diffuse to really run major industry, although it'll be fine for a lot of lighter duty household applications, which I think could be beneficial. And I would be in favor of helping that along as well. Thank you.
Hal, Mendocino County is mainly reliant upon energy produced outside the county. What can you do as a supervisor to encourage and promote energy production here within the county?
Well, production and conversation are kind of hand in hand, and I would certainly support the PACE program, and we have strong advocates of that sitting right here in this room. The PACE program is a new program, and all I'm saying is give it a chance, let it develop, let it go. The biomass deal, some of you are old enough to remember the biomass proposals that came into this very town, and everybody stood up and said, gee whiz, we don't want it here. We had this big NIMBY attitude about it. Bad deal. But in truth, the small biomass things, and I'm quite familiar with this, I've worked with Art Harwood on it and the Raffi folks a lot, it depends on a flow of raw material where you can collect that which you use for biomass. Therefore, you need a vigorous logging program. Back to forestry. Forestry is going to be the thing that helps pull that all together. And as to the hydro plant at Potter Valley, that requires the diversion of the water through the tunnel and into the Russian River Valley from the Eel River. Well, Friends of the Eel River and strong environmentally concerned citizens fight that every time it comes up. If you want hydropower, you're going to have to support the diversion. And if you want the water to support Mendocino County and improve the water situation in Lake Mendocino and all of that, you have to support the diversion. That's why I've advocated for managing that as a twin river system.
Okay, so we are about to have our last predetermined question. And it's getting close to 8 o'clock, and at 8 o'clock we will start with the questions from the audience, which are being categorized up here. So this is for Holly. County government is the largest provider of mental health services in Mendocino County. Do you think it is doing a good job? What would you do differently, if anything?
As I mentioned earlier, the mental health service provisions is an incredibly important, it's a very important role that the county provides in terms of service, and it has a significant impact on our local safety officers. I think that we need to evaluate carefully the privatization of those services and see how that is working. It's certainly, I think that there's more that we can do. You see the effects of insufficient mental health services with the impacts to law enforcement. You see the effects with our increasing homeless population. We're failing the homeless population in Mendocino County. We're not, as a community, meeting that task, and that really needs to change, because this impacts all of us, and we can't just be doing business as usual in terms of mental health services, because, as we know, funding is drying up and everyone is having to do more with less. So we are going to have to get really creative in how we fund and how we provide those services to our community.
Clay, county government is the largest provider of mental health services in Mendocino County. Do you think it is doing a good job? What would you do differently, if anything?
I'm not extremely familiar with it, but I have been impacted by a dear friend that committed suicide over this very issue. It haunts me today. I have a vested personal interest in seeing that this get funded. I think this can be done by having a better, more stable job force, the promotion of jobs and business to generate the tax revenue for it. I would very much like to see that the healthcare plan I design incorporate features to help people that need this sort of thing. And particularly for those out there that have a very serious problem, to help them out to get away from drugs. This is a very serious thing that costs the county not only money, but it impacts all of our lives. It's a dreadful thing, and I don't want to see it continue. Thank you.
Okay, Hal. County government is the largest provider of mental health services in Mendocino County. Do you think it is doing a good job? What would you do differently, if anything?
Well, there's 150 people in this room, and we all have mental health to one degree or another. Sometimes we have good days, sometimes we have bad days. And when you have bad days, you need to cool off. Mainly what you need is a place where you can relax and be supported. That's what these puff units used to do. That's why I think that Howard Hospital would make a good hub for that sort of a purpose. But the reason why it's been privatized is because government doesn't deliver mental health services very well. It's far better to hire somebody who actually knows what they're doing than to simply get people into the government, on the government payroll, and think that they're going to do a good job with this very specialized service. When Ronald Reagan closed the mental health hospitals throughout California, he basically threw that populace back on the counties where they were ill-prepared to deal with it, and they're still ill-prepared to deal with it. The reason I say that the contracted or privatization aspect of that is better than what we had is because every year we posted $2 million of red ink from the mental health department. That's beginning to turn around, but you just can't support that. You can't just bleed away $2 million every year and think you're doing a good job. But we do need these cooling off periods. If you're in Covelo, your cooling off period is basically how long it takes an officer to take you to Lake County.
Okay, Tom. County government is the largest provider of mental health services in Mendocino County. Do you think it is doing a good job? What would you do differently, if anything?
This is a problem that's just going to get larger, and mental health, I've watched it be dismantled for the last 5 years and known a lot of people from the county who slowly ran or were pushed away from working there. Privatization, the idea is you give somebody else the money, less than you were going to spend to do it, and hope they do it right. But with mental health, you're on the hook. If they don't meet the requirements for the feds and the state, you have to come in and pay the money again anyway. So we have a decision to make if we're willing to pay more money, and we can all be up here and say we're for everything, but really we can't afford much more than we have right now. So the challenge is, are you all willing to pay $100 or $200 or $500, or what is your limit to keep the services we have now? We have to have an honest discussion about that, because with inflation and the burden on government, we're either going to pay more or we're going to have less services. It's a simple question, but we have to be honest with each other and somehow get the answer and then work within the budget. We want smaller government, but we want all our services. So we have a difficult challenge ahead, and I want to be there working on that with you.
Okay, so we have concluded our first half. We're only going to take about a 2-minute halftime to get the questions, but you can get some water, step out, but we're going to be right back in about 2 minutes. So if you run out, make sure you run back in.